Right, so you can all see that, can you?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm nodding. That's brilliant. Okay, so I'm Andrea. I'm from Barchester Healthcare, and we are one of the biggest elderly care home providers in the UK. We have over 200 homes. I have a regional role as a customer relationship manager, and I'm working with 4 homes at any one time, which are around the Northamptonshire, Milton Keynes area. So here are the ones that I'm working with at the moment, and Ashby House is obviously the most relevant, given that this is a Milton Keynes meeting this morning. I live in Northampton, and I'm tending to be based at Brampton View in Northampton at the moment, because I'm only going into one home for now until things unlock a bit further. Maybe in January I'll be able to go back to some of the other homes. So most of my work at the moment is remotely, but my role is really to raise the profile of homes in the areas that I'm working in. So what I thought I'd do is just give you a few words to really think about, and I'll talk around them, to really look at what a care home search should involve. So if you or somebody you know is looking for care, these are the things you need to bear in mind. So the care journey is actually often quite a long process. And it sort of sneaks up on you. You deal as a carer, as a family member, as a friend, or as the individual themselves with aging in hopefully quite a good way initially. Obviously, we're all going to get minor health issues as we age, but actually it can progress for a number of years with minimal support and a very independent life, just a few compromises here and there. Obviously things grow, health concerns become greater, new things get added to your medical records in the surgery, and then for some people you start to get bigger medical setbacks, and related to that is the concern of the family. They will start spotting things, they will try to broach things with the elderly person perhaps, or maybe they won't. Maybe it's too tricky a conversation to have at that stage. You might be looking ahead, or actually some people might be sticking their head in the sand. I'm guessing I'm going to be sticking my head in the sand. Are we going, no, I'm fine, leave me alone, there's nothing wrong with me. And that's the case for a lot of people. But things will progress and more serious things will happen. So there will be accidents, falls in the home, hospital admissions for various medical or accidental things. And you may notice yourself, or a loved one will notice, maybe getting forgetful, maybe people are concerned if a person is still driving, or they might start to notice self-care issues. So all of these are starting to indicate that somebody is moving towards needing a bit more intervention to look after themselves. From the family's point of view, then this is a conversation I have with lots of people. The family find it increasingly difficult to juggle work, to juggle caring for the elderly person, also probably looking after children. It could actually be that the main carer is actually themselves quite elderly now, or moving on. You know, quite frequently we have family members in their 70s and we're looking after their loved one who is in their 90s or more. So actually, you know, we're looking at 4 or 5 generations in a family that have a different role in the care. So at this point, people are really probably starting to look at options, or may even still be avoiding looking at options, although by now they probably realise that something does need to happen. So of all the words I'm going to put up in this presentation, the next one is probably the trickiest of all, and it's about the family decision, or not being able to make a decision, or the elderly person themselves not wanting their family to be involved. The family dynamics are probably more difficult than any sort of deterioration in health or medical situations. So we have brothers and sisters who have different opinions. We have brothers and sisters who agree on what the best next step might be, but family, elderly family, parents or grandparents are still going, no, just get out of it, this is fine, I'm all right, I've been fine here for years and I'm not going to let anybody change that. So that is probably much harder than finding appropriate care. And then there's a range of care options that can be looked at that I'll go on to in the next slide, of all different levels, and people will probably welcome different types of care depending on their individual living arrangements and their personalities, and what their experience of care is as well, whether their experience of care for their own parents was positive or otherwise. That will influence their preferences. And actually preparing for care is quite an important process as well. There's a lot of giving up of things, so giving up home, perhaps moving away, fear of losing friendships, possessions that just can't be held onto in any sort of volume anymore if you're leaving your home, and looking ahead to things like powers of attorney and deciding who's going to be a trustee of your estate. So there's quite a lot of preparation for that, and looking further ahead, of course, discussions around end of life care could be really important to have, or should be important to have at some stage. But again, that's something that a lot of people will put off and may not ever have that conversation until it really comes to the last minute and they're in a care home or hospital setting. So if there's any questions yet, please just do shout. I'm quite happy to answer as we go along. And just to remind you that there are quite a lot of care options, and people work through these stages typically. So initially people will probably rely on family, friends and neighbours to do a bit of shopping, to make sure they're safely up in the morning or safely in bed at night. There are support groups and community organisations for almost every concern that you might have. So the obvious ones for all carers really are carer support groups, and just joining one of those and having contact with other carers who are a bit further through the process than you can be really, really valuable. There'll be community organisations and charities that can help as well, churches, community groups. Whatever the medical concerns are, there will be a support group, even if it's something quite rare. So I would suggest that whatever is a concern, even if it's not a massive health issue, but there are support groups for people with diabetes and heart conditions and Parkinson's, and lots of groups for people with dementia. So even if your elderly loved one is saying, no, I don't want to see other people who are like me, as a family member or friend, it's still well within your reach to approach them, and they'll support people who have any connection to somebody with that particular current situation. So for people who are still in their own homes, then there are various alert systems that hang around your neck or work with a phone, and there are also domiciliary care services everywhere who can come in and do really what is relevant to the individual. So don't just assume that what you know is what they offer. They could befriend, they could be doing personal care, cleaning, cooking, enabling people to continue social activities. They could be helping with paperwork or keeping in touch with friends. So whatever's important to the elderly person is really what you need to talk to domiciliary care services about. And you can arrange how many times they come in a day or a week and what sort of processes they're going to follow. Moving on a bit further, there's a whole range of supported living options as well, whether that is rental or purchased, whether there's on-site care or off-site care, or whether people are just downsizing to something more manageable. Some people have live-in carers as well, and I know of occasions where that has just worked absolutely brilliantly, but just bear in mind you have responsibilities to those live-in carers as well to make sure they have breaks and that you have cover for when they're going on holidays. Quite a lot of live-in carers who come through agencies are from abroad as well. So, you know, probably once a year they're going to want to go back to see their own families as well, if not more than once a year. Or for people who really do want to keep their own home for longer, respite care is a good intermediary step really, particularly for people who want to test out residential care or try a particular care home. I would have said it's really good for when family go away on holidays, but there hasn't been a lot of that this year. But that's another opportunity for families to say, look, we're going away, we're a bit worried, we don't want you being lonely, or you know, we just feel better if we know that you're somewhere safe with people who are going to look after you. So that's a really good option as well. You might find that respite care is useful if one of the carers or the spouse or sons or daughters are having surgery themselves or has some healthcare issues. So if they're unable to provide that care temporarily, then respite care might be useful for a few weeks. And then the next stage is probably looking at permanent residential nursing or dementia care. For some people, it could be looking at a specialist care unit if they have particular health and support needs. And further down the line, it could be hospice or hospital care, but clearly not everybody will go to that stage. All okay so far? I can't see anybody's faces, so I hope this is all useful. So some really important considerations in looking at care are making sure the individual still has choice and is fully informed about what is being considered on their behalf. And if they have the mental capacity to influence that decision, then they most certainly should be involved at every stage that's being looked at. And taken on visits to places. You know, if you're looking for care homes, go on a visit, have a show round. Homes can even do that now, even in the current COVID guidelines. They'll provide you with PPE and they'll show you a small part of the care home to give you a flavour of what the environment is, and you should still be able to meet the manager and you know, have a chat at the things that are most important to you. Some people will need a local authority assessment of their actual care needs, but also of their financial situation. There are issues around powers of attorney, looking at longer term options, care, and who's going to make decisions, making sure people's will is in place. People often don't want to broach these subjects because actually they feel quite uncomfortable about them. But really, in terms of things like wills, it's a very positive life decision. And I've written my will recently, and actually I feel a sense of relief that should the worst happen, there's something in place, but often people just don't want to broach that, but it is important that you do. For people with dementia, there could be an assessment and a court hearing about the deprivation of liberty if somebody is going to be moving to a dementia specific community. The costs of care are absolutely key at the moment. So for people with their own assets, homes and resources, this could be, in fact, the biggest or the second biggest purchase people make in their lifetime. It depends how long they are going to be living in a care home. So do seek some advice on that. There are people that can look at ensuring that future costs can be covered and protect some of the current assets. Selling the home is an administrative task, but it's just a massive emotional change as well. People could have been living in that home since they married 60 years ago. It's where they raised their family. So it's going to be a huge emotional stretch, that is. I'm going to mention family dynamics as well. So while all this is going on, the family might find some tensions between each other just because they have different opinions. Think about where somebody might move to if they're moving to a care home. So is it local to where they have lived, or is it more appropriate that they move where their family live? Again, there's no right answer for that. That's for each family to work through. And also think about what the location is. If somebody's used to living in a city, they might not really want to be living in the countryside, and vice versa. If they've always had a massive garden overlooking fields, they probably won't want to be somewhere very urban. So there are care homes in every location everywhere, so there is plenty of choice there. And I've talked a lot about families, but there are quite a lot of people who don't have that support network around them, in which case statutory services are going to be more involved, or they might have other people who are not family and don't have any rights, but are just concerned people, so families, friends, neighbours, vicars, whoever else might know them. So if you actually come to choose a care home or help somebody choose a care home, please do speak to the manager. Ideally, if you phone up, you should be offered the opportunity to discuss things with the manager. You might speak to somebody else first, a receptionist or somebody else who will give you the basic details. But when it comes to discussing actual care, you need to speak to the manager, or at least the deputy manager or the clinical lead, somebody in authority there. Think about what care levels the home offers and how long you think your loved one might need to be there. the more care levels there are, then the less chance there is of a future move. So not all care homes offer dementia care or nursing care. So think about the next step. Care should be individualised. So I would talk in quite a bit of depth about care plans, ask to see a template one, see what's put in place, and think about your individual loved one and what will be most important to them. So, you know, if they're not really particularly sociable and they don't want to be doing crafts every day, that's fine. But if they used to really love the ballet and the theatre, think about whether some of those things can still be brought to them, or once people can go out again, whether they can be taken to those things. So that's about activities, but also their individual care. Would they prefer, for any reason, personal or cultural, to be looked after in the main by a male or female carer? Now, homes can't always guarantee that, but they will certainly try to make the balance more what you're hoping for. Does the home have transport? Now, I know most care homes have got a minibus that's just sat still for about the last 9 months and not really taking anybody anywhere. But ideally, people in a care home would be taken out for lunches, to events, to meet people, shows, lots of activities, country walks, whatever's appropriate for the individual and the area they're in. Look obviously at the CQC report. So you would hope that most homes have a good rating. A few will have outstanding, and some will have inadequate or requires improvement. Be aware of what the report is, but use your initiative, use your instinct as well. If you go to a home and it feels nice and it requires improvement, just examine why it's like that. We have a lot of care homes, so inevitably a few of ours require improvement, including some that we have bought recently from another care home chain, and we are improving them. So look at where the potential for that home might be. Is it below where you'd like it to be because it's on its way down, or on its way up because you could actually get a really good lifestyle for quite a reasonable price if you look at what the content of the report is. Think about the costs and the contract as well. There will be terms and conditions in that about payment terms, about if somebody passes away, what happens to their things, when does the contract end, what are you still liable cost-wise, are there annual increases in fees, and obviously at the moment ask questions around COVID, whether they have any current infection, have had past infection, what their processes are, and what their visiting arrangements are, which are very dependent on their COVID situation at the moment. Now, our homes have mainly got either pods in the garden, or we've divided lounges in half so that residents can enter from one half, visitors from a garden door, a patio door in the other half, and there's a big window in between. So, you know, people have caught up over the last few months. They're now providing quite comfortable visiting arrangements. And I just wanted to give you this picture of David and Glenys at Ashby House in Milton Keynes. They're a couple, married couple, and they are both now living at Ashby House. They moved in quite recently. David moved in first, and then Glenys moved in soon after. And our homes are very, very festive places. It's probably going to be the best place to have Christmas this year, compared to what everybody else is having to compromise on. So, you know, if I can help anybody understand about the care journey, that's great. If they're interested in a particular Barchester home, then that's great as well. But you know, it will come to us all at some point. We will have some influence on somebody's care. So I hope that's useful, and if anybody wants to speak further, then please do. Thank you very much.